Welcome everyone to my next video in my Teaching with Outschool series. Today is all about your frequently asked questions. I get so many questions, both from prospective teachers and fairly new teachers to the Outschool platform, just asking me about how do I increase my enrollment. How do I decide what I'm going to teach? I want to teach a flexible schedule class. Help, I don't know what I'm doing. There is a bit of a learning curve when you sign up with Outschool as a teacher. I kind of waded through it myself, just kind of trial and error, figuring out what worked for me, what didn't work for me. So I wanted to just hit some of the top frequently asked questions regarding teaching with Outschool. I know there are so many more that will come up as soon as I finish this video. I'll say, oh, I should have talked about this. But hopefully this will at least kind of help you get your bearings and determine what the best course of action may be for you. Before I dive in head first, I always want to caution that this is just my personal experience. It's my advice, what has worked for me, what will work for you, and the type of courses that you teach. It can vary greatly. I can only speak from my own experience and kind of guide you along as best I can based on what I know and what my fellow teachers have encountered. I'm friends with several Outschool teachers and what they have felt has worked for them. So please, by all means, if you hear me say something and you're like, oh, that would never work for me, I could never ever do that, you're probably right. You're probably right that it would not work for your class or your situation. And obviously take it with a grain of salt. Okay, so without further ado, my number one frequently asked question across the board is, how do I increase enrollment? I wish I had some kind of magic formula for you that was, right, this kind of course and offer it at this time and have it at this price point. The honest truth is it really depends on season. I'm recording this right now at the end of June, and enrollment is down for everyone across the board. I know it's going to pick up again in the fall. My fall and winter, like the beginning of the semester, those were really popular times for enrollment. So some of it is going to be seasonal. With that being said, there are some things you can do to increase your enrollment or your likelihood of parents enrolling in your class. This is not a popular answer, but I stand by it because it has worked for me. You have to take on low enrollment classes. You are going to have to do that just to kind of make a name for yourself. I did it for about 2 months. If someone enrolled in that class, even if it was an 8-week class with one student, I taught it. I know that is not possible for everyone. Based on your financial situation, what else you would be doing if you weren't teaching at that time, it might not make sense for you. I did it in a way that I wouldn't be making money any other way during that time. I did not have to pay for childcare during that time. My children were either with me. I have a home office on the other side of the camera. I have kind of a living room classroom set up for my son who is homeschooled, and then my other 2 daughters who come down and hang out when I'm teaching. So I had a setup where I didn't have to pay for a lot of overhead in that sense, like childcare or other issues. So I looked at it as I could make $0 that hour, or I could make $5 that hour, whatever it worked out to. But it really worked for me. that one student, I did in fact take an 8-week long class with one student, making not a lot of money an hour. She ended up being my most loyal student. She spent the entire school year with me. She has now taken, I believe, 8. Is that right? It's either 6 or 8 classes with me, and is looking to continue in fall semester. And so it worked. And the family was very appreciative that I was willing to take on a low enrollment class. It's just something that you might have to do in the short term. It helps you also build a name for yourself. Parents can see, oh, I love this class. She looks like a really nice teacher, but she hasn't taught anything. She has no reviews. She has no classes taught. I don't want to roll the dice on this new teacher who, doesn't have any classes under her belt. That's fair. As a parent, I understand that. I would be hesitant with that as well, especially if it is a more expensive course, if it's a longer course. I don't want to be, plopping down $100, $200 on a teacher that I am unfamiliar with and I have no reviews to go on. So that is always, I always kind of cringe when I say it because I know it's not always a popular piece of advice, but it has worked for me, and it has worked for several other teachers that I personally know and have worked with. Take those low enrollment courses and build a relationship, build a rapport, get those reviews under your belt, the number of taught classes under your belt, and eventually you will start to see your audience build. You will start to see a client base build. There's also a lot of debate as to, should I offer short classes that are less expensive, like one-time $15 classes, or should I offer a 4-week class? That really seems to depend on what you're teaching. I started with quite a few one-time classes, little writing workshops. I still do some painting workshops that are only one time, 1 hour, $15. For me and for my subject matter, they're not very popular. I'll run them a couple of times each season, my painting courses. All of my other shorter workshops, I really have stopped offering because they weren't popular for me. Now, I know there are a lot of other teachers who teach like math, engineering, science. If you have a specific kind of workshop, like a computer science workshop, those work really, really well in those areas. So again, it might be some trial and error. I would say a safe bet is 4 weeks. A 4-week class set around $50. That gives you enough time to explore a topic. And it gives you enough time to build a rapport with your students. If you're doing a lot of one-time workshops, if you have an off day, that's it. that's your off day. You're having, I don't know, you have a cold, you have a fever, your kids are screaming in the background and your mute button isn't working on your headphone. You never know. That's kind of my own personal experience. 4 weeks, about at the $50 price point, is a really nice way to intro your students to your teaching style, to what maybe they might see in an 8-week, 12-week, 15-week course. The vast majority of my classes are 4 weeks. I have a couple 6 and 8 weeks, and then I have a couple of semester courses. But most of mine are 4, and that's beautiful. It's a really nice sweet spot for me. It gives me enough time to explore a topic, build a relationship, and then move on to the next thing. And it's really nice for scheduling too, because I know, okay, for this whole month I'm teaching this class. I start at the beginning of the month, it ends at the end of the month, and everyone's happy. Okay. My other piece of advice, and again, this is totally based on my own experience. I'm in the Eastern time zone. I can fill a 4:30 p.m. class almost every single time. because it's hitting all of the time zones. It's right before dinner for us in the East. In the West, it's around lunchtime. It hits all of the U.S. time zones, and that seems to be a really, really great time frame. I don't know why. Not 4, not 5, 4:30. 4:30 to 5:20. Most of my classes are 50 minutes. That just seems to be the sweet spot for me. So that's my present to you. 4:30 Eastern Standard Time. That seems to work. Okay, so those are kind of the basics with how to increase enrollment. If you want to take it to the next level, you are really going to have to build your business. I treat my online teaching business the same way I taught my professional teaching career. It's my business, my livelihood. I need to take an active role in promoting myself. I have an online presence. I had a YouTube channel and a blog before I began teaching with Outschool. And I make sure that I, obviously, as you are all viewing right now, I make sure I include Outschool in those areas. And I also have a Facebook page for my teaching business, and I do my own advertising. Outschool does advertise for me. They advertise for all of their teachers. That is part of what you're paying for when you give them your cut of the course fee. They do advertise, but I also like to pick and choose my demographic. I like to pick and choose my courses that I'm promoting and when I'm promoting them. You have to really get to know your audience. And there's no other way to do that than to be actively involved in your own advertising. And I know, again, this can be kind of a sticky topic, because on one hand, we are paying Outschool to advertise, and we are, amongst other things. But I also am aware that I am in charge of my own business. So I make sure that I have a hand in my own marketing, my brand. I am aware that I am a brand now. And it's not the same as being a classroom teacher, where you show up to room 303 every day and there are your 25 students that you are being paid to teach. That's just not how it works here. It's private education, it's online education, and so you do need to play an active role in your own advertising and increasing your enrollment. So that, again, it's such a tricky thing, because what works for one may not work for another. But those are really my top 2, I guess, answers to that question. How do I increase my enrollment? Number 1, take on those single enrollment courses, as painful as it may be for a little bit, and have an active role in your online presence. Make sure that you are advertising, that you are visible, that you are accessible to your parents and your students. Let them know who you are. Create a YouTube video and make a video. You're listening to me talk for 14 minutes now, so you get a sense of who I am. And I have had both teachers and parents send me messages through YouTube and say, I feel like I know you through YouTube. Could not be more happy with that. That's exactly what I'm hoping for, because this is what you're going to get in the classroom with me as well. This is me, this is how I talk, this is how I teach. So it's a great way to kind of get yourself out there and get yourself known in the community. Okay, so second question, what do I teach? For some, this may be harder than others. If you're coming on to Outschool with a very specific interest, then you probably don't have that issue. You know exactly what you want to teach. I came in as a language arts teacher, and I also have a background in visual arts. So I knew I kind of sort of wanted to teach a certain set of things, but I wasn't entirely sure. I started with phonics and then moved on to writing, because those were the areas that I taught in the traditional classroom. And then I just kind of kept building from there. As you learn who your audience is, as you make connections with families, they will tell you what to teach. They will come right out and say, oh, Sarah, could you teach a class on this? Could you teach a class on this? My Hamilton class, which I thank I thank heaven every day for, came to me from a parent who said, oh, you guys are both really into Hamilton. The daughter and I were kind of geeking out over Hamilton at the end of class. We were in a writing class. And the parent said, would you please teach a Hamilton class? And I was like, I can do that. I can totally do that. It had never occurred to me to teach a class on Hamilton. And now it is far and away my most popular class, hands down. And I love it. I get to, as I said, geek out every single day with these great kids who also love Hamilton. So sometimes you don't know what your niche is going to be, what your topic is going to be. Start with what you're passionate about. Start with what you're really, really knowledgeable about. For me, it was phonics because I was a reading interventionist for a while. And just go from there. And just build and see, okay, they're really liking these courses. How can I turn it into something else? And you'll figure out soon enough whether or not it's going to work for you, whether or not you enjoy teaching it, whether or not you're going to have the enrollment, and where that will take you. So once you have figured out exactly what you want to teach, there's always a lot of questions regarding flex schedule courses versus live courses. Kind of the default for Outschool is the live, I want to say one-on-one, but it's not because it's small group. But the live kind of interactive video learning using the Zoom platform. That is how most classes are carried out with Outschool, but there are flex schedule options. Outschool did just recently change some of their policies, and you are not able to schedule a flex schedule course until you have already successfully taught a live schedule class. So that is something to kind of put on your radar if you think you might want to move into flex schedule courses. So flex schedule courses are asynchronous. They do not meet live. You are delivering your content and information, providing any assignments, homework, discussion questions, whatever it may be, via the online discussion board with Outschool, or many of us, myself included, use Google Classroom or some other variation thereof to input your content. Okay, so when you're scheduling a flex schedule course, it's important to have a reason that it's a flex schedule class. Again, this is my experience and just kind of what I've gathered from talking to parents, talking to other teachers, seeing why and how their flex schedule courses work. For me, outside of my flex schedule Hamilton course, which I'll talk about in a second, I only teach writing, mostly. I have one theater class that's offered flex schedule, but that's because it's more of a lecture and discussion based course, but I mostly teach writing via flex schedule because that makes sense. It's difficult to teach writing in this online environment when everyone writes at a different pace, when maybe they need more time. It's not something where it works well in an online environment face-to-face with video chat, because honestly, a lot of it would be watching students write, and that just doesn't make a lot of sense. So that is why flex schedule works for those type of classes. I mentioned my Hamilton course. The only reason that I have a flex schedule Hamilton course is because I couldn't keep up with enrollment for the live section. It was just a matter of necessity. I'm currently teaching 2 sections a month of Hamilton, and those are all filling. And I really couldn't just teach anymore. I couldn't keep up with the demand, so I converted it to a flex schedule as well. So now I teach a flex schedule each month and then 2 live online. And so there's a reason that it's a flex schedule. As a parent, if you come on and see nothing but flex schedule courses, it's kind of like, well, why am I paying for the live teacher experience unless they're offering something really, really unique, or they're offering some kind of feedback, for example, grading their writing, and providing feedback, whatever it may be. If you're just posting lectures and content, that's not going to go over as well as some flex schedule courses that are more interactive, that have a grading element, that have a discussion element. Because we all know we can go on YouTube, on Teachers Pay Teachers, on a myriad of other websites and get lectures for little or no cost. So I always caution new teachers with the flex scheduling. As often, I don't know, as it sounds like a good idea, I don't know that it always translates well. I've tried to convert a couple of courses to flex schedule, and it isn't the same. It's like, it doesn't have the same feel. It doesn't have the same interaction. And that's important to know. And it's also a lot more work for the teacher up front. You need to put a lot of time into the content that you are presenting. So that's also something that you want to be aware of when considering live class versus flex schedule classes. Okay, so my last frequently asked question is, what do I do with students who, for whatever reason, are not participating in the way that I had hoped? I'll leave that kind of open there. Either they aren't participating, they are participating, but participating in the wrong way. They are spamming the chat box. I have come across learners of all different types of abilities and styles, and just any kind of student you can imagine. I have probably taught them either via Outschool or the classroom. You just kind of have to roll with the punches there. My biggest piece of advice would be to keep your class size small for as long as you possibly can. For, I'd say, about 8 months. I've been with Outschool for almost a year. For about 8 months, the largest class I ever allowed was 6. I have since moved up to 12. And I only do 12 students for specific courses that I feel can handle it if they're older. I feel as though I can have larger classes, and it took me a long time to feel comfortable with 12. I kind of gradually, I went from 6 to 8 to 10, and now I'm at 12. And I think 12 is where I really am at my limit. I cannot foresee a time where I would want to teach more than 12 kids in an online forum. But if you keep your class size small and you set your rules up front, I think you will have a much better time. That does not mean that you aren't going to have, the odd student or odd parent who is not going to follow directions. But it really does help, because if you outline the policies, the consequences in as many ways as you can early on, it really helps to manage those student behaviors. And this was my personality when I taught in a classroom as well. I use humor as much as I possibly can early on to kind of say, listen, I don't want to put you guys in timeout. This is not how I want to handle it. But let them know, these are my rules. This is how we behave in my classroom. These are the consequences. And I do put my policies in my course descriptions. I put them on my teacher profile. I let students know day one what is and is not acceptable in my classroom, because a lot of that varies based on the courses. I teach courses for students as young as 5. Those have different rules than my courses that have students who are 18, and different expectations. So I really think that is the best way to handle that, is to be proactive about any student behaviors that you may have. And if you do have an issue, a true, genuine issue, and you have reached out to the student, you have reached out to the parent, and you are not satisfied with the outcome, I would absolutely go to support and talk to them at Outschool and see how they would like you to handle the situation. So those are my most frequently asked questions for new teachers on Outschool. I hope that it has helped you get started on your journey. I have truly enjoyed my time with Outschool, and I wish all of you nothing but the best and much success on this journey. Until next time, everyone, bye.